This video is sponsored by Squarespace. All right, what's going on, guys? We got the Canon R5 right here. Actually, do you see that C70 that just came out? That thing looks crazy. Working on the wife right now to see if I can get one of those in, so we'll see how that goes. Wish me luck right there. But the Canon R5 is a camera I've been shooting with like crazy, especially for video lately, and it is absolutely amazing. In fact, I just put out a short film, shot the entire thing with the Canon R5, so go check it out if you haven't. I go over some like sound effects tips and stuff like that in there as well. So a really cool video, love making it, so go ahead and check that one out. But the Canon R5 had kind of a couple of issues that I spent dealing with the past couple of weeks while I've been shooting with it, but rather than kind of give you like 5 things I don't like about the Canon R5, I figured I'll give you my 5 tips and tricks and hacks for making the best of those features and for making the R5 an even more powerful camera. So let's get started and go over some of those. So the first one is going to be dealing with the overheating timer. And there is nothing more depressing than looking at your camera and seeing like 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left, and know that you had this cool shoot and deciding if you want to keep shooting in that mode and hope for the best or switch modes to something that doesn't overheat. However, we have it, it's there. Now, what I can tell you is since the 1.1 update, it has been way better for me. However, the timer is still there and the timer runs down just as much. So the big difference for me is that if I'm stopping the camera, I am able to record a little bit more. So here's some tips for dealing with this. Shut down your camera. Anytime it's not in use, boom, shut it off. Anytime that you shut off his camera, it will be gaining time back. And since that 1.1 update, it actually gains it back much quicker. Before, it didn't really make too much of a difference, but if you leave his camera on and in standby, even not recording, it will still maintain that timer. So if you had it like 2 minutes left recording and you keep it like this, it will still be 2 minutes recording. So shut off the camera. Anytime you can give it like a minute or 2 of rest, that will make a huge difference, allowing you to record more, like 2 to 5 minutes more on pretty much every mode right there. Also keep in mind that it really matters what mode you're shooting in. So if you're shooting in 4K 120 or 8K, you don't have as much time on that one. Make sure that you shoot all of your 8K or 4K 120 first. And the reason for that is this: if you shoot some 4K 24, 4K 60, things like that, the camera will begin to heat up or the timers will be reduced. And then when you go into those high stress modes like 8K or 4K 120, you'll find that you might only get like 1 minute recording, or sometimes it won't even let you record at all. So even though you still have maybe 5-10 minutes left of 4K 60 you can record, if you pop into 4K 120, you'll have 0 time. So go ahead and make sure that you knock out all of that 8K 24, 8K raw, things like that at first, or at least make sure that you have a big gap where you can power off the camera before you start recording. So in most of my shoots, if I know I'm gonna record that, plan out a little bit of a 10-20 minute break in between those at least, so that you know when you power on this camera and go shoot that 8K stuff or 4K 120, you are ready to go. And then you can pop it into kind of the reduced quality modes or 4K 60 or 4K 24 where the camera doesn't overheat as bad, and you can go ahead and shoot those all day long. Now first, if you guys need a new website, go ahead and check out squarespace.com. I actually just revamped my website because I was dealing with a brand new customer, wanted to tailor my website for them. It was so easy. In one night, I literally built a brand new website from the ground up. It is crazy easy. You can start with a template. You can add in new sections so easily. You can modify those, add pictures in. You can actually search for pictures on Squarespace, so it's really nice for being able to get started if you don't have anything ready to go yet. And you can even add animations and do crazy awesome stuff to really next level your website there. So go ahead and check it out. It's completely free to go get started and build a new website there. When you do want to go live with it, use my coupon code Learning Cameras. You'll get 10% off and go live with that site today. If you guys do, go ahead and let me know. I'll check it out. Definitely look forward to seeing what you guys can do. All right, so now let's talk dynamic range, and it's something that we probably heard about or you've experienced with. These Canon cameras do not have the best dynamic range for whatever reason. So what I typically do is shoot like a standard profile with the contrast lowered, but honestly, the big lack of their colors look amazing, video quality looks amazing. You're not gonna hang on to a lot of highlights when you do that. So 2 tips for doing that. You can either use C-Log, and if you haven't used C-Log, definitely check it out because it's not as bad to use at all. There's some LUTs that Canon has on their website that you can actually just throw in there and make your footage look pretty normal again and grade. Do keep in in mind if you are shooting C-Log, you do need to grade your video. Even if you throw a LUT on there, it will not be perfect, but it gets a great way of getting about 1 to 2 more stops of dynamic range. And then also when I do shoot 4K or 8K RAW, you do actually get another about 1 to 2 stops. Now you need to make sure if you're shooting RAW, also keep the camera in the C-Log. If you don't and you just shoot 8K RAW but not in C-Log, you will not be getting dynamic range or extra dynamic range. So keep the camera into C-Log, record like that, throw it in 8K RAW, you will get probably another stop or 2 of dynamic range. It's insane. So with all of those combined, you do get the dynamic range that you would hope for a camera like this. So anytime I need to be shooting those scenes that have like these very bright skies on them in my subject, and I do want that extra bit of dynamic range, definitely 8K RAW is really cool for this camera. Throw it into C-Log and you will get some absolutely stunning dynamic range. I use this for a couple of clips as well on my short film, so you can check that out and see if you can notice where those are. But yeah, this is absolutely insane what you can get with the power of RAW and C-Log. So one of the more disappointing things for me was that it didn't record dual cards for video. So you couldn't get a backup recording. So if you're doing things like weddings and interviews like I am, it's nice to have a backup recording. And they do have 2 different card slots, so you couldn't do that for every mode because some require the CFexpress, but there's really no reason that 4K 24 couldn't be recorded on both cards. It's available on tons of other cameras that cost half as much. So I do think it's something that we'd like to see, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be using both card slots for video. And here's what I would recommend. These cards, the CFexpress especially, are very expensive. You actually don't need that card for anything except 8K RAW or 8K all-eye compression, or if you're shooting 4K 120, because that mandates you use the all-eye. Now, if you're shooting 4K 60, you can shoot the IPB compression, no problem, to the SD cards, 4K 24, high quality, all that kind of stuff. Even 8K in the IPB compression, which is still like 450 megabits per second, so extremely powerful 8K high bitrate files can be recorded onto these cheap SD cards. So what I would recommend for you guys is go ahead and plan on doing that. Get an SD card, get a CFexpress card, put them both into there. You can actually program one of these buttons to be able to switch your SD card slot from the priority from SD card to CFexpress. So I have mine programmed to this asterisk button. Only in video mode. In photo mode, the asterisk button does something else. So really nice that you can custom functionality of this camera like crazy. So in video mode, I hit that button, I can change my card priority. So I can record all my long form interviews, 4K 24, 4K 30, high quality, IPB, all eye, it doesn't matter, onto the SD card slot. Even 4K 60 is no problem for it, or 8K. And then if I ever need to record something like 8K RAW or 4K 120, all I have to do is pop into that menu, change that mode, and I am ready to go. It takes like 6 seconds, and then I'll record that to the CFexpress card. So I am able to use much more efficient cards to record most of my stuff. They're still very reliable, and they're great card formats. So really a very good option for you guys if you're wanting to record and utilize both slots for video. Now, one of the more interesting things about this camera is the quality differs extremely depending on the type of format that you're recording in or the crop factor that you are using on this camera. So a lot of other high resolution cameras have the same thing going on, and that is because you have this 8K sensor, but what happens when you need to record 4K? What happens to all those extra pixels? Or 1080p, what happens to all those extra pixels? So the camera is deciding what to do with those extra pixels. Sometimes it's oversampling them, sometimes it's just throwing away, pixel binning, things like that. So it is very key to know how this camera performs in all of those different modes. And here's what I'm gonna tell you. In 4K 24, the high quality mode is by far the best way to go. It is one of the best, if not the best, detailed 4K cameras on the market in that high quality mode. It's taking 8K, oversampling that, which is incredible to give you that mode. However, you can overheat the camera in that mode. So if you're doing it for like an hour-long interview or wedding, that's probably not going to work for that. Do not shoot 4K 24 low quality. Do not, unless you have high ISO or something like that. What you should be doing is shooting 4K 24 in the APS-C crop mode. That is by far better quality than the 4K in full frame mode. And so what's happening in that crop mode is it's actually oversampling pixels as well from the pixels that are remaining. And the 4K mode is so bad in the low quality that honestly 1080p basically looks the same at it. So whatever Canon is doing to oversample that, I do think it needs to do a better job. It's not the greatest on there, but throw this camera into 4K 24 in the APS-C crop and you'll have amazing 4K video in that mode. Now, if you do need to shoot in some of the higher frame rates like 4K 60, that is going to be better in the APS-C crop mode again. Now, if you're shooting high ISOs like 6400 and up, do use the full frame mode because that will get you a little better low light performance, and eventually that starts evening out with the more detail that you're getting in the crop mode. So if you're shooting high ISO, I would shoot the full frame modes. But for anything lower ISO, like things like this, definitely use those crop modes for both 4K 24 and 4K 60. You're gonna get much more detail. Now I will say this, if your subject is moving, not like I am right here, but more moving with the camera moving on a gimbal, things like that, you get a lot of motion blur in the image, you're not gonna see the difference in detail as much. When you're shooting a static object, you will see the difference incredibly. So it just kind of depends on what you're shooting on whether or not you're gonna notice it as much. If I'm moving around like crazy, you can't see the difference as much because you have so much motion blur going on in that image. So definitely keep that in mind. If you're shooting any of those modes, definitely check out that APS-C crop. It is extremely powerful. You do get a little bit more reach. It's not quite as good in low light, so do keep that in mind, but you are getting detail like crazy from this camera. All right, so one more big one, and then I've got kind of a secret one at the very end that a lot of people don't know about. And that is, it is kind of a nightmare to be switching between these different modes on the camera. If you haven't noticed, 4K, where you choose your frame rates is a separate area from where you choose your crop, which is a separate area from where you choose if you want to record 120 frames per second. And if you have your crop selected, it won't let you shoot 8K. If you have to undo the crop and put it in there. If you have digital image stabilization on, you can't shoot 8K. So there's all kinds of limits. And I find that navigating between the different modes, if you're shooting 4K 120 and then you want to switch really quick into 4K 24 high quality, that's not a quick switch. It takes quite a while. One of the awesome things about this camera though is you can program all of that into your custom menus for video, and it's actually extremely easy to recall them. You'll just hit this mode button right here. You'll see C1, C2, and C3. You can record all of those into the menu system. So go ahead and navigate into your settings, and it's on number 5 right there, and you can go in your custom shooting modes, register your settings. So what I do is I'll have C1 set up for like 4K 24 APS-C crop, since I know that's the highest quality mode for my interviews. Then I want to be able to switch really quickly from that into 4K 60 or into 8K. So you can program mode 1 for 4K 24, mode 2 for 4K 120, mode 3 for 4K 60, whatever you guys use the most. You can have your shutter speeds go along with that, and it's going to be much faster for switching it. Literally, I just hit mode and then C2, and then now I'm recording in 4K 60, and I hit mode and C1, and then now I'm recording 4K 24 in my APS-C crop, which is the highest quality mode. So that is going to be the best way of switching between these modes. It is so much faster than having to navigate through the menu system. So another thing I do want to make sure that you guys know is obviously this camera is advertised as a 10-bit camera, and it absolutely is with 422. However, keep in mind that is only when recording C-Log. It is the only thing that forces the camera into that 10-bit mode. And so if you're shooting anything except C-Log, you will only be getting an 8-bit image out of that. So if you are doing grading, not only do you want to be doing C-Log because it's going to get you a little bit more dynamic range, but also because it's going to get you that 10-bit file. So I'd encourage you guys to look at C-Log, whether you're shooting it in the regular formats or shooting it with that RAW, which is going to get you even more dynamic range. Definitely check out C-Log on this camera. It also has some help guides and stuff like that for making the image not look super flat if you've been shooting it. But yes, you need to be shooting C-Log if you want to get 10 bits. So hope you guys enjoy that. Let me know your comments below. Check out that short film, guys. If you have any more tips, feel free to leave them. All your other friends are going to be watching this video, so we appreciate sharing that knowledge right here. I also have a group on Facebook where you can kind of share some of that as well. Hope you guys are doing amazing. When I get the C70 camera, I'll go ahead and update you guys. Wish me luck on getting that, and I'll talk to you guys soon in a new video.